Zenlin is attempting one of the craziest challenges we've ever seen, climbing over 1500 rating in just under 24 hours. He will start in the MMR depths of Solo Shuffle, where there are so few players he actually had to wait long queue times as a healer. Then he needs to climb past every single rating benchmark until he is just one lobby away from rank 1. Oh, and just to be clear, Zen isn't going to be doing anything fancy. He's not going to be disrespecting his opponents by playing over-aggressive. In most games, he will be sitting near a pillar just doing a standard healing rotation. We will follow Zenlin throughout his challenge, pointing out the most common mistakes players are making at 1000 rating. Challenger, Rival, Duelist, and even 2400. We're even going to shatter one of the biggest myths in the game, that healers have zero impact on their lobbies. And that includes the lowest ratings possible, where Zen will have to battle his way out of the 1K arena bracket, which is a bracket with less than 3% of the total Solo Shuffle population. If you thought queue times were bad at high ratings, it gets infinitely worse here, because Zen literally sat 4 hours in queue as a healer. In every game for this challenge, Zen will be playing with a GCD tracker that will show every ability being used by everyone in the arena. Every button press, whether it's damage, CC, or a cooldown, will be here. Pay attention to this because you should quickly notice something about these games at low MMR. Did you see it? Players will sometimes go multiple seconds without pressing a single ability. This is what we call dead globals, and it is the #1 culprit for dealing low damage or healing. In fact, as we follow Zenlin along during his journey, one of the most immediate things you will notice is that as we climb in rating, we see fewer and fewer dead globals. Ironically, we did see players like this druid who would regularly press buttons, and was even min-maxing by using Star Surge on cooldown, which is obviously really good. In many cases, these players were neglecting the most fundamental part of their rotation, in this case, keeping up Life Bloom. If this player would focus more on keeping Life Bloom up instead of spamming Rejuvenation and Regrowth, they would be way more efficient with their globals and would certainly climb. We know increasing damage is the #1 way to climb for everyone. It's especially important at these ratings. This is why when we design our courses, we focus on teaching everyone their damage and healing goals first. Once you know what you need to prioritize in your rotation, PvP feels much easier. Another massive problem Zen discovered at low ratings is that players routinely split targets, with both DPS hitting different players all game, like in this game where his rogue was training the hunter while his warrior was off hitting the shaman. Eventually, he realized that calling a target in the starting room could make a massive difference, well, at least when his teammates were on board with his plans. But above all, what Zenlin was starting to realize is that all he needed to do to win consistently at lower ratings was simple: keep your team alive. Now, I know what you're thinking, no skill capped, but as we will discover later on, one of the biggest mistakes many healers make, even at higher ratings, is running in and playing over-aggressive. It's not your job to win the game as a healer. That responsibility falls on your DPS. Again, Zen wasn't doing anything super fancy. He might have used the occasional mind control here and there, but his #1 priority was to make sure his team could stay alive in deep dampening. By just doing more healing than the enemy healer, Zen could consistently win. Obviously, as a rank 1 Holy Priest, Zen breezed through low MMR lobbies and made it to 1600 fairly quickly. At this rating, players were starting to deal big damage and were generally hitting the same target. For the first time, Zen was having to script his openers, trading multiple cooldowns to keep his team alive. But now we want you to pay attention to two things. Notice there is a Marks Hunter on the enemy team, and pay attention to Omnibar. We're going to play this full round at maximum speed. Let's see what you notice. We're 2 minutes into this game, and the Hunter has not used Freezing Trap a single time. Players around rival ratings might have been doing decent damage, but nobody seemed to care about CC. Here, against Double Mage, Zen was able to cross the entire length of Nagrand Arena without anyone trying to stop him. Of course, it is hard to land CC under pressure, but if we take a look at higher rated players, one thing is clear. They're constantly trying to make the most out of their CC DRs. Vicmax is probably the kill target in 70% of lobbies he plays, but that doesn't stop him from at least trying to land a trap every 30 seconds. Think about it like this: a good healer can do at least 2 million HPS. That means a 3-second intim and a 6-second trap is 9 full seconds where the healer does 0 extra HPS, which all equates to millions of healing lost. Consistently landing CC in the opener is crucial for establishing early game momentum. You need to snowball enough pressure to make sure the enemy healer is put under stress. There's absolutely no reason not to go for CC early if you're popping your CDs. And in the late game, when dampening is high, CC is also super valuable for reaching your win condition. For most specs, the opener and eventual win condition involve learning a standard script to easily follow in most games. Because they are so important, we teach every spec their opener and win condition at Skillcat. Because along with knowing how to maximize damage and healing, these are probably the most important guides for every class. As Zen climbed higher, players were starting to land CC more consistently on healers. We even saw this hunter land a sick trap off of Zen's Fear, which was enough to close out the game. Zen was now above 1800 and was at the perfect MMR range to get those fast Qs. This is the range with the highest number of players since it is the starting MMR for any fresh character. The climb from 1800 to duelist is incredibly brutal, especially for a healer, since now players are doing consistently higher damage while also landing noticeably more CC, forcing Zen to more aggressively trade his CDs. But wait a second, what happened to the warrior's enraged regeneration? Let's go back and see. The warrior pressed their wall the moment they dropped to 50%, despite the fact that Zen had all of his CDs still, and even without the Windwalker monk pressing CDs. What this all meant is that when Zen eventually took a CC, the warrior had nothing to slow down damage, which meant his healer needed to burn multiple cooldowns to keep him alive. Now, there's nothing inherently wrong with using a defensive when your HP drops low, but you need to think of the tools your healer has to keep you alive. One thing Zen noticed up to this point was that DPS might have been using defensive CDs, but only as a reaction to their health bar. It's like they all had the same weak aura blasting an air horn whenever they dropped below 40% HP. In general, it seemed like players from Rival to Duelist weren't paying close attention at what was happening to their healer. Take for instance this Warlock, who doesn't notice Zen is pinned across the entire map. The Luck could simply press Gateway, but instead they run further away from their healer, even LOSing behind a pillar. This is why we highly recommend every player uses the healer in CC weak aura, at least until Blizzard nerfs it in Midnight. And one add-on that Blizzard won't be fully nerfing is better Blizz plates, which puts a neon green icon above your healer's head, making their positioning much easier to see. Speaking of positioning, what we also noticed at this rating was healers being over-aggressive at the completely wrong time. Here, this paladin tries to run in for a Hodge, despite not having Trinket or Bubble. This results in them getting feared not once, but twice, again while their Warlock is all the way across the map, which eventually snowballs into a loss. Players at Challenger seem to ignore healers completely, but once you get to Duelist and above, you will get punished for your over-aggression as a healer. Eventually, Zen was able to make it into Duelist range, which ironically is when things do start to feel a bit easier as a healer. This is the bracket where players are doing good damage, landing CC, and are trading defensives at much better times. At this rating, players need to do some fine-tuning. And if there's one single mechanic DPS could definitely work on at all ratings, but especially from Duelist and above, it's kicking. Let's take a look at this lobby against a Demo Warlock with Zen having a Fury Warrior and Survival Hunter on his team. On paper, this should be a free win, but throughout this game, not a single interrupt will be landed, and in fact, his DPS will feed the Warlock precog, not just once, but multiple times, essentially taking away the main advantage they have against the caster, and eventually causing Zen to take a CC, losing a game that was easily winnable. Now, if you're a regular viewer on this channel, you already know what we're about to say. If you want to miss less interrupts, you should focus on what we call late kicking. The best players aren't trying to instant kick every cast, but instead hold their interrupt for the very last milliseconds of the cast. For one, people are significantly less likely to juke at the very end of their cast anyway, and by kicking late, you make your opponent waste time by fake casting over and over. It also technically makes the lockout feel longer for the caster, since they invested all that time actually casting a spell. So if you play Shaman with only a 2-second wind shear, kicking late gives you even more value for your interrupt. In one single Q session, over the course of 6 total hours of playtime, Zen finally managed to get just below 2300, over 1000 rating above where he started. And then he decided it was time to take a break, get some McDonald's, and go to sleep until the next day. With renewed energy, Zen did some scenic exploring across Azeroth and was ready to end his 24-hour solo shuffle journey. His final lobby would be against his mortal enemy, a Voidweaver Disc Priest. The most important game during this series would be him playing double warrior into an Ellie Shaman and a fire mage on Tolvaron Arena. Ask any warrior main and they will tell you this matchup is borderline unwinnable, but throughout most of this game, Zen does 2 very important things. Number 1, he makes sure to use Dispel on cooldown, aiming to remove CC as often as he can to keep his melee mobile, and 2, play as safe as possible, avoiding tanking any unnecessary CC. This would wind up being a fairly long and stressful game with many close calls, but by focusing on keeping his team alive and without doing anything particularly fancy, Zen was able to win. He was able to then win the very next lobby against the exact same warriors, ending his 24-hour journey at 2650. In a very poetic way, the same mentality he used in his early games of playing safe and keeping his team stable until deep dampening were the exact fundamental rules that carried him close to rank 1. Perhaps the biggest takeaway from this challenge is the idea that healers have a bigger impact than most people realize. Sure, it can be tilting to deal with questionable teammates and a bad MMR system, but at the end of the day, stability will carry. If one thing is definitely clear, it's that WoW is hard these days. Learning a new class means knowing your goals, sustained damage, burst sequence, opener, win condition, min-maxing tips, and more. Sure, you could spend hours digging for all this information on the internet, but what you eventually find may be outdated from sources who might not know what they're talking about. But at SkillCapped, we condense literally everything you need to know in one place, saving you an insane amount of time with thousands of videos organized into courses for every class, while only working with the best and most experienced players in the game. And if you want personalized help with your gameplay, we offer every member one free VOD review every month, and a direct line of contact to a support network of Rank 1 gladiators. We even help you set up your UI with the click of a button, avoiding all those headaches of configuring all those add-ons. Everything we offer is backed up by a rating gain guarantee where we promise to deliver results or your money back. So if you want to save time and hit your goals fast, be sure to use the exclusive discount link below to get started.